So far, we've looked at our chart fundamentals and learning the basics of how charts are made, how to use the charts, what the charts are telling us. And now we're going to actually look at a chart and do a little bit of familiarization. At the beginning, we talked about our enabling objective of being able to describe the fundamental features of a nautical chart. So right now we're talking about the terminal objective of when using a nautical chart, being able to identify key characteristics. The chart we're looking at right now is chart 18773, San Diego Bay. Before I zoom in at all, I want to just take in the whole chart. I can already see a lot of key features of this chart at this very zoomed out level. I see a lot of anchorages out here outside of the harbor. I can also see a couple anchorages right in here. So now I know where I can anchor. I can clearly see the path of the channel into and out of the harbor. And knowing the area a little bit, I know that these are the naval piers here and the carrier piers. But now let's zoom in and start looking at this chart a little bit closer. As mentioned previously in the earlier videos, one of the very first places that we need to go is to the title block of a chart. Looking at this title block, see we're in the United States, California West Coast, San Diego Bay specifically. I see my projection. This is a Mercator projection, scale 1 to 12,000, meaning that this is a harbor chart. I see my horizontal datum, North American datum of 1983, which is WGS 84 equivalent. And I see my vertical datum. My soundings will be in feet at mean lower low water. I also begin to see other notes and information on land. That's typically where we're going to find our notes and other information. For example, here is the location of all the tidal stations coming in. This is very useful when doing your planning for tides and currents. I see more information here about my vertical datum. Any heights will be in mean high water. That is typically the vertical datum that we use in the US. And we'll look at that a little bit later when we look at the Coronado Bridge. Now heading out to the beginning of our transit if I was inbound. See my approach channel, and there's a range here that we can look at once we get a little bit farther down the leg here. I see I have red buoys on my starboard side, green buoys on my port side while I'm inbound, meaning that this port is Ayala Bravo. You can see those anchorages a little bit more zoomed in now. I can see my coal regs demarcation line drawn here clearly, so I know that as I'm passing buoys 7 and 8, I will also be going across the coal regs demarcation line. Continuing into my transit, I have a compass rose here on the right. My compass rose tells me that the local variation here is 12 degrees east, but that was done in 2012. So if I needed to correct that for my current year, there's an annual decrease of 6 minutes. Also here in the compass rose, I start to see a handful of wrecks. Now, if you didn't know what that symbol was, you would go to chart 1, or on your VMS screen, you would just query it. And these are the Zuniga shoals here. Very shallow water. See depth soundings telling me this area is only 7 feet, 9 feet, 8 feet. So it makes sense that people have wrecked here historically. Even without going anywhere else, I can also see a note, danger zone, see note alpha. I would then zoom out and go find note alpha and see what that was telling me. And here we are at note alpha. Navigation regulations are published in chapter 2 of Coast Pilot 7, so that's good. I now know which pub I would need to go to for this harbor. Reading on, it tells me pretty much go read your pub. Information concerning the regulations may be obtained at the 11th Coast Guard District, and refer to charter regulation section numbers. Sometimes our notes do that. They say this is a specific area for a very important reason, but to get better detail on it, read the applicable publication. Going back to our inbound transit, as we continue in, I see I'll pass a magnetic silencing range. This is the degaussing area for this port. And coming up to the end of this entrance leg, I now see my after range marker and my forward range marker so that I can use those coming in to see if I'm on track, in the center of the channel, right of track, left of track. If we continue inbound, we're going to get to those anchorages we saw while we were zoomed out. We talked about depth soundings a little bit, but now we see water that's actually deep enough for us to be navigating in. 45 feet, 52 feet. Again, remember this is based off of our vertical datum of mean lower low water. These are special anchorages referencing that note alpha again, so I know I would have to get into Coast Pilot 7 to find out more about this area. But another thing that we see very commonly in anchorages will be the bottom type. Over here I see SSH. I have another one here and another SSH here. I happen to know that this stands for sand and shell, but again, I would query that or I'd go into chart 1 if I didn't know. Understanding the bottom type of your anchorage is very important when you're making decisions about how much chain you'll pay out, holding type, things like that. Since we're talking about depths, you notice there are no depth soundings in our actual channel that we will be transiting. If I come back down to around where no alpha was, I see San Diego Harbor project depths. This tells me that the approach channel is 55 feet, the entrance channel 47 feet, and so on. Anytime you have a dredged channel that doesn't have depth soundings within it, somewhere on the chart there will be a depths box telling you what to expect from the depths of the channel. Since we're right here, we'll move slightly to our left and we can see our graphic scale. This is broken out in nautical miles and yards, telling me this distance on this scale of chart would be 500 yards. Here's another 500 yards, and then broken out into 100-yard increments. Same thing with our nautical miles here. Of note, from this end here to center, and then from center to this end, that's only half a mile. So this entire length here is 1 nautical mile. It's really important when looking at your graphic scale that before you start to use it, you actually assess how is it broken out and make sure that you're using it accurately. Then if we had to compare that 1 nautical mile here, we could go over to a minute of latitude and see from 41 minutes to 42 minutes here, which is a nautical mile, that distance is the same as this distance here. So that all makes sense. Returning to our inbound transit, as I continue inbound, trying to get to Naval Station San Diego, see I'll be passing the aircraft carrier turning basin. This is where the aircraft carriers go, and it's because they can't fit under the Coronado Bridge. So let's go look at the Coronado Bridge and talk about our vertical data for height clearance. Here is the Coronado Bridge, and there is a lot of information being given to me to help safely make my way under this bridge. Beginning to determine if I can safely fit under this bridge, I see multiple areas talking to me about the horizontal and vertical clearance. The reason that there are multiples is because there are different spans of this bridge. These darker areas here are pylons, So there's different parts of the bridge that I can go under. We can see the outlines of our actual channel that we are supposed to be in. So it's most likely that we would be transiting under one of these two sections. There are also Raycon indicators on the actual bridge, and it tells me here what the Morse code that I would see on my radar will be for each one. So if I was going under one of these two sections to stay inside my channel, I would know I'd be going under a fixed bridge that has a horizontal clearance of 660 feet and a vertical clearance of 195 feet. If that is safe for my vessel to go under and fit between those pylons, then it is safe for me to proceed inbound in the San Diego harbor. If you're stationed in San Diego and you're on something smaller than an aircraft carrier, you and your ship have probably gone under this bridge hundreds of times. When we need to really worry about our vertical clearance is when we are going to a port that might be new to us. Always check your horizontal and vertical clearance to make sure your ship will actually fit. And as we talk later in this course about tides, we'll see how to incorporate our tide heights at any particular time into this decision-making process as well. Just because you fit under the bridge at charted depth, do you fit under this bridge at high tide still? Things like that to consider. It goes beyond just the foundation of what the chart tells us. And then a little bit past Coronado Bridge, I end up at the naval piers. Now that we've completed our inbound transit of San Diego Harbor, let's look at a few more chart features.